Kickoff for the 2024 season is just around the corner as Georgia looks to win their third national championship in a 4-year span. What are the three biggest what-ifs for Kirby Smart's program in the 2024 season? Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. We're brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. Guys, head over to RHOBACK.com. Use promo code SECU to get 20% off your first purchase. Again, that's our friends at RHOBACK. Promo code SECU to get 20% off today. Kirby Smart's team will hit the field this fall looking to win their third national championship in a 4-year span. And to say that the excitement level and, more importantly, the motivation in Athens is at all-time high after last year's disappointment, losing at the worst possible time in the SEC championship game, and, of course, being left out of the 4-team college football playoff. To say it's at an all-time high and the excitement level is there is a major understatement. What are the three biggest what-ifs for the Georgia Bulldogs as they begin their quest for the ultimate prize this season? And, guys, we'll start with number one for me. As you take a look at the Georgia offense, there's a lot of question marks at the wide receiver position, at tight end. You got some new faces in the running back room as well. Carson Beck returns to lead that Georgia offense. And I've been saying this, guys, all offseason, and I'll say it yet again. I'll echo this because we're starting to see all these preseason quarterback lists, these quarterback power rankings, and I will continue to say this over and over again. And I understand Carson Beck plays on arguably the best team in all of college football. Even with some of the question marks, losing guys like Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, you can look at Georgia top to bottom and say arguably they have the most talent in college football, whether it's offense, defense, special teams, what have you. So I think Carson Beck almost gets punished for being on a really, really good team. But I will continue to say this, guys, and I don't know why it is, but I think Carson Beck is wildly underrated, right? We're talking about a guy that led the SEC in passing a season ago. I don't care how much talent you have around you, guys. If you're not an elite football player, if you're not an elite signal caller, you are not going to lead the league in passing yards. It's simply not going to happen. This dude threw for just shy of 4,000 yards a season ago, guys. To give you more perspective on just how good Georgia was offensively last year, Georgia's point per game total was the highest it had been last year since 2014. No, by the way, that was the last time that Mike Bobo was the offensive coordinator in Athens, Georgia as well. So the Dogs offense was one of the best in college football. It was elite. It was one of the all-time great Georgia offenses, and it starts with QB1. So my first what if is this, guys. What if Carson Beck leads the SEC in passing yards yet again? Because you look at Georgia, they've got all the other pieces, even with some of the question marks we're going to talk about, that losing Brock Bowers, losing Ladd McConkey. They're elite yet again on defense. Their schedule is much more difficult, but on the offensive side, you've upgraded at running back. You've got promise at the receiver position. You've even got promise at tight end that maybe you're not going to replace Brock Bowers, but you've got other dudes who are ready to fill in and step up and be playmakers in their own right. But, guys, Carson Beck's one of the most important players in college football this year. The reason being, if Carson Beck lives up to his potential, plays to what he did last year, maybe even slightly better, Georgia's going to win the national championship. I will go on record right now and say if Carson Beck plays at an elite level, start to finish, Georgia's going to win it all because they're the best team in college football, top to bottom. Maybe you could argue Ohio State if they're clicking on all cylinders, and I think that would be a great matchup in the national title. But Carson Beck is the most important player in the SEC, most important player in college football, because if Carson Beck is playing at an elite level, quarterback-driven game, right? It's not everything, but if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance, and Georgia's got that dude. And if Beck's playing at an elite level, if he's leading the SEC in passing yards again, what does that spell for not just the rest of the SEC, but all the college football as well? Because if Carson Beck's right there yet again, just shy of 4,000 yards, maybe he hits that 4,000-yard mark. He might not have to this year because the running game should be better. But if Carson Beck is leading the SEC in passing yards yet again, that means that Georgia offense is clicking. It means they haven't missed a beat. And it means Georgia isn't just the best team in the SEC. They're the best team in college football, the favorite to win the national title, and they're probably hoisting the trophy at season's end. Guys, my second big what if for the Georgia Bulldogs entering the 2024 season, I just mentioned them. Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey. You have to give credit to what those guys were in the Georgia offense. I think it's very easy to sit here and say, okay, well, Dominic Lovett and RaRa Thomas and Dylan Bell, and these guys are going to emerge at wide receiver. Oscar Delp and the Stanford tight end they brought in and some other guys, they got enough weapons. Trevor Etienne at running back is going to take off a lot of the load. Like, they've got enough weapons. But here's the biggest thing, guys. When it comes to replacing Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, it's not just about let's replace the numbers and the stats and whatever, because there's plenty of talent on that Georgia roster. There's a lot of guys on that Georgia roster who can fill in, who are extremely talented, who will, dare I say, have great seasons. But the question's more so, are those guys ready to be the dude? And what I mean by that is, when you're in crunch time and you need a big play, you could always go to 19, it felt like. Brock Bowers was always going to make a big play. Ladd McConkey was always going to make a big play, right? It's not just about putting up stats. It's about when the game's the line and somebody's got to go out there and make a big play. Good players look around and say, or good teams look around and say, okay, who's going to make the play? Great teams have a bunch of guys that look at each other and say, I want to be the one to make the play. I want to make the play. I want to be that dude. So my second big what if Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey are irreplaceable? What if we find out and we realize replacing these two guys is a much taller task than maybe we even realize? Not from the standpoint of talent, not to say that both those guys weren't extremely talented, because they are, but not purely from the standpoint of, wow, there's just nobody who's got that skill set, nobody who's got that talent, nobody who can even put up those stats. But what if they're irreplaceable from the standpoint of, hey, it's 3rd down and 8, and we don't have that safety valve that we used to have. We don't have that guy that we can depend on that can go win us a game like Brock Bowers did last year against the Auburn Tigers. Like, we don't have that guy. If you watch that game, I think Auburn probably knew he was getting the football. And it was just play after play after play. Brock Bowers making a big play and winning that ball game for Georgia. Snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. That's what it felt like. So, what if Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, two extremely good players? Brock Bowers, probably the best tight end in college football history, dare I say. A lot of talented pieces. There's a lot of dudes that I think could emerge, could step up. But what if we come to realize Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, they're actually irreplaceable pieces, and it's much more difficult to replace them than maybe we first thought. My third and final what if for the Georgia Bulldogs this season, guys, and you look at Georgia defensively, I feel like we've come to expect the Dogs are going to be elite on that side of the ball. They're going to be salty. Everything we talk about with Georgia's defense, like I know some will come into the season saying, hey, the defensive front, right, wasn't as good last year. What happened? What went awry? And they weren't. They weren't. Georgia's defensive front wasn't as good. They got much, 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 much better as the season went on. But that was an area you could probably look at and say, man, they just weren't quite what we normally expect. That being said, guys, again, we're talking about that comparatively to what Georgia normally is. Like, they were still top 20 in the country. They were still one of the best in all of college ball. They just weren't top 3 or top 5, right? So let's keep that in mind. Georgia's going to be salty yet again. They're going to be really, really good defensively. This is a Kirby Smart defense. You know what you're getting. I think secondary play, guys, I think it's a common theme in the SEC and across college ball as well because of the spread offenses. Teams are going down the field. Great quarterbacks, great receivers. It's really hard to defend these guys. So a lot of teams have, if they're going to have question marks, it's a lot of teams it's going to be in the secondary. And I think Georgia's the same, right? You lose a couple guys at corner and safety. You got to replace those dudes. You still got a lot of talented bodies returning, don't get me wrong. And I think Georgia's going to be fine in the secondary no matter what. My third what if for Georgia. My third what if for Georgia football this season. what if young stars in the secondary emerge? And you talk about star power, Georgia's got a bunch of dudes that are going to play, and they're going to play immediately. And by the way, Kirby Smart, he'll play a freshman. If you're the best player out there, look at Malachi Starks in 2022. I believe he started 14 games for them, right? So Kirby Smart says, you know what, doesn't matter how old you are. You're the best player. You're going to play. We're going to play the most talented guys who are the best players, give us the best chance to win. You look at Georgia, Ellis Robinson, KJ Bolden, DeMello Jones, Andre Evans. These are dudes they just brought in the last signing class that are immediate impact type of guys, especially Ellis Robinson and Bolden, who just went through spring ball as well. So what if those guys emerge? What if those guys become everyday dudes, playmakers, guys you can depend on? This Georgia defense, which is already going to be one of the best in college football, it goes from that to an elite level, a truly elite level, because all the other levels, guys, the front seven, Georgia's going to be as good as anybody. Again, the secondary is the one place you look at, okay, you got a new corner you're breaking in. You got a new safety you're breaking in. You're going to have to replace. And they've got plenty of talented guys to fill in. But as we know, guys, and I'm not even saying here's the good news of Georgia. They don't have to thrust these freshmen out there. But if one or two or a couple of these guys emerge in that secondary, this is a Georgia defense you could look at realistically and say they do not have flaws. They do not have weaknesses. They do not have holes. This is a Kirby Smart, traditional Kirby Smart defense. Georgia's complete on all sides of the football. And that's going to help lead into really, really big things in the 2024 season. So, guys, my three biggest what-ifs for the Georgia Bulldogs entering 2024. Number one, what if Carson Beck leads the SEC in passing yards yet again? Number two, what if Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey are irreplaceable? And number three, what if young stars in the secondary emerge? Guys, that's going to do it for me. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. Until next time, guys, I'm Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we'll catch you on the other side.